But for right now, let me bring Chris on. Chris, my man, how are you?
Doing good, Jerry. Thanks for having me. It's an honor to be here. And now you're talking me up too much, man. I'm feeling very underqualified to talk about GRC and how cool it is
Oh
now.
no, my man. It takes a village, dude. We're locked arm in arm. We're like the phalanx. You standing right next to me, and we'll share a shield. You know what I mean?
Love it. Love it. Yeah.
I love it. All right, so Chris is going to be talking about GRC as your career superpower. Chris, are there slides you want me to bring onto stage?
I got them pulled up here. I don't have a way to make them public because I was not thinking ahead and made them on my work Gmail. So I'll have to get those imported and probably throw them out to LinkedIn or Discord.
Yeah, no
Shortly
problem.
afterwards.
But if you want them to be brought up on stage, you'll have to use the share screen button in
Gotcha.
Restream, and then I'll be able to bring them over here. There they are. All right.
Gotcha.
Do you want to go into? Do you want to have it with the slides on the side, or do you want to put it? There it goes. All right. All right, everybody. So sit back, relax, and let's let Chris. Let's let the cool sounds of the hot news and the GRC Career Superpower wash over us in an awesome way. Thanks, Chris.
Hey, thanks, Jerry. My friends, it's really great to be here to meet you all and to talk about something that I really feel strongly about, that GRC is an absolute career superpower. There's probably going to be some hot takes, some controversial takes, some things that a lot of people just might not agree with, but I think that's all for the better, and I think that we'll think and hope that we'll all take something away, learn from it, and then just make the world and our industry a better place because of it. So, like Jerry was saying, and thanks again, Jerry, for the introduction. I'm Chris Honda. I don't really have a cool Packer tag, so you can just call me Chonda. Everyone at my work does. So this is me. I'm not really that exciting of a person, but before we start, I think it would be prudent for me to go through the appropriate disclaimer of these are my views. This isn't endorsed by Wistic, my employer. This isn't endorsed by Simply CyberCon, right? This is just me saying some things that are sometimes kind of wild. None of this is legal advice. Please keep that in mind. I'm not a lawyer. I suggest that if you need one, and before you do anything that might need a lawyer, you talk to someone and pay for that. There will be some examples that they are a way that you could do stuff. It is not the way that I'm telling you that it can or even should be done. GRC roles might not be for everyone, but the skills are. That's kind of the introduction to part of the spicy takes, right? I'll dive into more, but I think that we can learn a lot from different areas of different skills, and that's something that I really want to hit on during this. And also, I might mention my company a couple of times because we are a little bit in the space. The service we provide is in the space, but I'm not here to sell. So just want to put that up front. All right. So I am a goober. Just to talk about myself, like I said, I don't think that there's that much interesting going on, but I've had a lot of past professional lives. I've helped run restaurants. I wanted to be a band teacher. That's probably the most fun thing about my past. I'm a terrible salesperson, as you might be getting a vibe for. Done a bunch of different things, and most recently, before I jumped into the security world, I was a software engineer. I spent some time learning from the books, right? Getting the book knowledge. Went through a master's program. I've done some certs, but most of the experience and what I'll hit on now, if I don't say it again multiple times throughout our session, is that you learn by doing, and that's how I did all of my learning. And I would recommend that if you're feeling unsure about what to do next, try a project, reach out to someone, see what kind of value you can provide by doing something. There's nothing like getting hands-on experience. I mentioned before, I'm at Wistic. I'm a senior security analyst, right? Whatever that means. A lot of what I do is in the GRC realm, but I like to tinker and do a bunch of different stuff. So if we're looking outside the professional realm, I make kimchi, which I know is kind of a little bit different. I like to spend my time smoking meat in the summer, and it's sad, my sourdough starter died, so I'm having to remake it, but I like to bake that as well. I'm otherwise terrible at baking, but quick plug for that. And then I'm also a dad, which I think is the best job of all time. I changed this recently. I said that it's a great skill, that negotiating is a big part of GRC. We'll hit on that a little bit, and there's no way to learn how to negotiate properly like there is with your children. So some key takeaways. I'm not going to read this because no one really talks like this. I've learned this from some of my other presentations that these are very formal learning points that I hope that we can all kind of have in mind. But I don't talk like this. Most folks don't. So I'll leave this up for a sec with the understanding that I hope that we come away with some good understanding of what GRC is, how it fits into security, how it fits into business overall, how you can be successful, how you can develop those skills, and then right how we're actually going to turn that into your career superpower. So if I was to simplify these and say these in a way that people say in regular conversation, security is a great career subset, right? I think a lot of people have heard that GRC is a great way to get into security. While I do agree, I also think that GRC in its own right is just a fantastic career to be in, and it's for everyone. Whether or not you want that to be the primary mode by which you operate and deliver professional services to your company, I think that there's something for everyone in the GRC space. GRC is everywhere, right? Sometimes we use different vocabulary, sometimes we have different terms, different perspectives of how it works, but GRC is everywhere. And I think that as we learn and adapt to how that looks in different places, we'll just get that much better at it. GRC skills also follow you throughout your career. And as you work on them, as you work on the negotiation, as you work on understanding the risk, identifying risk, how to translate that, and then build successful governance and compliance programs on top of that understanding, you do some fantastic stuff. And that's, I think, the key propeller for making that your superpower. And also, I mean, putting a plug in for it, right? Now, GRC solves real problems, right? Risk is a real thing. We have risk in our personal lives and our professional lives, and having good understanding of how to quantify that, how to identify risk, how to then put things in place that helps us to understand and properly manage risk is really important. So that's something that benefits us both within and outside of our careers. All right, some quick highlights. We got to understand what GRC is, and I'm not going to dive in too deep because I kind of nerd out about this, and I could talk forever. So we're going to like barely scratch the surface about this. And so I just want to set that expectation. We're not going deep into okay, this is what GRC is, why it's important. This is how all the components work together. We're scratching the surface. I want to give you a taste so that you can catch the bug and start doing the research yourself and dive into it because it's a lot of fun. I mentioned before, right? GRC is everywhere. I like to look at it from a translation type lens. I work with different languages. I speak a couple different languages to varying poor abilities, but I see a lot of commonalities in GRC being almost the interpreter, the translator, the intermediary between business and the technical or the security realms. So I think that it's important to highlight that. Same thing with developing the skills, right? I found that if you ask yourself why we're doing something, that helps inform us what we're looking for in terms of identifying risk. Why are we doing? Why are we governing ourselves this way? What is the impetus for this? What are our compliance requirements, and why are we doing it that way? Right. So asking that question why behind everything is absolutely critical to not just GRC. It's critical to any professional skill set. But I found that the more you ask yourself and others why, the more successful you'll be in a GRC capacity. And GRC also elevates your career by, you know what, if we're being honest, right? Businesses, organizations that generally exist to make money and keep money. And then if we think about our capacity, our role in GRC from that perspective, that's where we really start. That's right. We're putting on the cape. We're becoming Superman, Superwoman, and we're doing some good things. And then that's where, if you like the phrase, where you can be the hero, and you could feel really good about that too. So we're going to look at GRC slightly less terribly defined. I know I kind of rambled about it for a second, but from a high level, right? Governance, GRC stands for governance, risk, and compliance, with governance being what your organization does, why, and how they do it. Meaning, right, we as Wistic, we provide software. We provide software for vendor risk management processes. Why we do that is because we want to help reduce third-party related breaches. So understanding and assessing that risk is important, right? So having an understanding from like a business mission perspective is a big part of it, but then also why we do certain things a certain way, right? If we were a public company, we would be subject to Sarbanes-Oxley. Do we want to conduct ourselves ethically, right? This is where we get into the fun human side of business, is understanding, okay, why are we doing the things behind it? What are we going to do about that, and how are we going to achieve our goals, right? So this is things like, generally we think about strategy, culture, policy, procedure, right? Standard operation, SOPs, right? This is kind of, and of course I'm overgeneralizing, but when we think about governance, if you're looking for how your organization approaches governance, those are going to be the kind of things that you want to think about. Looking at the R for risk, right? We understand that bad things happen, and things always do happen. There's only so much that you can do to make everything go the way that you want to. So the concept behind risk is that we're measuring, identifying, analyzing, and understanding bad things that may happen, preferably before they happen. And then we do our best to manage those risks, which either means, hey, we're gonna find ways to reduce the chance of this happening or the severity of this risk if it were to happen. We want to minimize the impact that it's going to have on it, the negative impact. Or maybe it's just not worth it all. We have to walk away. Or also conversely, maybe we're fine with whatever's happening. We just say, hey, if it happens, it happens. We're willing to deal with the consequences up to this level. So that's the whole concept behind risk management. And I think it's also important to note, I don't think I talk about this as much as I'd like to, also considering how short a time we have, but this is a part that I love to geek out about. We provide guidance about risk management. I feel like it's not our place in most circumstances to say you can't do this because it's too risky. It's our job as risk professionals, as security professionals, to say, this is my understanding, this is what I found, I understand how this contributes to the business, and this is what might happen. What would you like us to do, and how can we help? Is an approach that I personally like to do, right? We don't want to make decisions and tell people it's too risky because we might not have all the information. So we should be doing our best to understand and then deliver the identification and analysis of the risk, and then let the risk owner make the decision on what to happen, on what to do next. And then lastly, compliance. This is where I feel the most related, that where I feel the closest to this field is I've always kind of been more of a rule follower. I don't generally like to push boundaries. I'm getting out of that shell, but compliance, I'd like to describe it as it's the cousin that you meet at the reunions that say, hey, you have to take pictures of everything or it didn't happen, right? Because that's essentially what it is at the heart of it, right? Compliance is all about demonstrating that you are meeting your governance requirements and that you're doing the things that you say you're doing, right? So think audits, think tests, think assessments, right? This is all falls in the realm of compliance. So right, very slightly less terribly defined. This is how we think about GRC from a very, very high level, right? There's lots of nuance, but these are kind of the baseline terms that we'll be working with going forward. All right. Um, I've mentioned a few times how GRC is kind of like the translation conduit for how we connect between security and technology, the more technical side of business, and then the business side, right? We generally see there tends to be a lineup of a mismatch rather of communication between, say, the sales, the marketing, the operations teams, and then the engineering, the security, the IT teams, right? It's almost like we speak different languages. And the first thing that comes to mind when I think about how we fix this kind of problem is this picture. Tyler had a great discussion about history and how that's important. I echo that, Tyler. I think that was a really great thing to bring up. So here's my little bit of history lesson that I like to pull in. This is the Rosetta Stone, which a lot of folks have heard about, and I wish that I had a deeper historical knowledge about this, but from a high level, the Rosetta Stone was discovered little more than 200 years ago, and what it did was it gave scholars, modern scholars at that time, the ability to understand ancient Egyptian because the piece that people found translated the same section of text three times in three different languages, and it allowed people to understand, okay, this is how you understand this is how you translate and interpret that. And this is kind of what I would put ourselves out as GRC professionals to be. We are the Rosetta Stone for the business, right? When we're talking between teams, I cannot think of a team that is more integrated than the GRC function into business, and having the requirement, but then also sharing in the excitement of understanding what everyone is talking about from a different perspective. So when we talk with our marketing teams, say, for example, about risks that they might have, right, we want to make sure that we're protecting the company's reputation, for example, right? What laws do we need to make sure that we're following, that we're adhering to, or else we'll take a reputational hit, right? Like if we're not following GDPR and our marketing strategy doesn't reflect that, that's gonna hurt us. So that's where we have to be a little bit of marketing expert. I mean, we don't have to be good at the marketing, but we have to understand the purpose behind it, the value that they're delivering, so then we can find ways to help support that same mission to the overall company success, right? And it's the same thing with, say, engineering, right? A lot of folks don't want to get into programming development. I feel you. That's part of why I moved into security, because I think it's its own language and its own mindset. But having had some of that background, it's exhilarating. I can't think of a different way to say it. It's really fun to think, okay, this is how this works on the back end. This is all the technical magic and wizardry that's happening. And now I got to figure out how to explain to some of our customers who, say, our customer sales team that's asking about, okay, what's our implementation? They don't speak the engineering language, but they have to understand, right? They have to make the judgment based on the information that they have on hand. Is this going to be a good fit for us? Is this going to meet our needs? Is this going to, right? How is this going to impact our operations? And frequently, I find that our team sits on those kinds of calls, and we're able to have those conversations, and it's really fun. And I've found that there's a lot of value that we can deliver in that capacity. All right, so I've rambled a little bit too much about the Rosetta Stone and how we serve as the translators. We can serve as the translators for our businesses. Um, I also felt that there weren't enough memes in my presentation, so enjoy a few, hopefully in the next few slides. Right, how are we going to build GRC skills, right? Because we're always talking about how do we break into cyber, and I think that's a great conversation that I'd love to be more active in. It's the same thing with GRC, right? If we're thinking about it as a subset of security, we got to figure out, okay, how do we get in, right? Is it as simple as taking a course, going through a boot camp, getting a degree? Generally, it's not, but there's a handful of different ways that we can do it. One way that I've seen recommended, and to an extent, I'd also recommend, right? It's great to have the conversation. The best way that you can have that is by going out, reading some of the things that we talk about, right? Look at some of the governance standards and requirements. Read up on how to do a risk assessment, what risk is and how that's calculated, and compliance standards and frameworks. Think like SOC 2, NIST, ISO, right? You hear all these things floating around. A lot of those are out and to an extent somewhat free to learn about. And that should be enough to get you in having a conversation and finding more resources that'll get you into a more contextual situation where you can learn these things hands on. Also, a shameless plug, right? I know a lot of us are big fan of Dr. Osier's work, the community that he's built, and the things that Simply Cyber community has done. So, I mean, shameless plug. I've also shamefully not finished the course, but the amount that I've done is fantastic, and I've learned so much from the program, and I can't recommend it highly enough. Please go check out the Definitive GRC Analyst program. You'll learn a ton, and it'll get you up and running and doing a lot of great things really fast. You can always ask your security manager, your compliance risk manager, right? Whoever happens to be doing anything security, and chances are that's most people. Just say, hey, I want to get involved. I want to get involved in helping with risk management. I know we have compliance requirements, and I'm interested in learning how I can contribute. What can I do? Right? Going, being proactive and offering your service. I don't know about this, but I'd love to learn, and then I'd love to make your life easier in that area. I've had people do that with me here at my current company, and I'll tell you, it's a life changer. We love hearing that, and right, those of us that are GRC nerds, we do love talking about this and sharing that love. So, never a bad thing to do to ask, hey, how can I help? How can I get involved? You can also, read the policies, think about that, help with audits, following the rules. Right? It's great. It's a great way to get good at GRC if you find ways that you can then be a key part of the GRC program and not being a problem. I do recognize that there's benefits also to kind of pushing the boundaries and saying, hey, this is how we can do this better. People naturally want to gravitate towards the guardrails at times. So, hey, are the guardrails in the right place? Are they pointed the right way? What else can we do? Right. So follow the rules. It should also say maybe figure out how we can make those rules better as well. Not just more, not stricter, but how do we make those rules better? And your role is irrelevant. And I don't mean that meaning that your role isn't important. Your role is irrelevant, meaning anyone can do this. It doesn't matter if you're in sales, right? If you're a recruiter. One of my good buddies is watching this hopefully right now. And we've had the discussions like, hey, I don't know how to get involved. And I tell him, look, it doesn't matter that you're a recruiter, because you are key part of your organization. You're still subject to the governance requirements. You're still part of the compliance audits, right? When people check out, when people are conducting their audits on your organization. So a lot of the time, I can't think of a situation where your success or your entry point to GRC is dependent on the role that you're in. That's what I mean by that. anyone can get involved. There's always ways, different perspectives. You have a unique perspective, and we, the people in these roles, we want to hear from you if you're not already. And if you are, take a look at the people that are in other roles that aren't directly involved, right? I think that there's a lot of unique perspective and approaches that we can learn from the folks that want to get in or that are in different areas of expertise. So that's my quick plug for that. And I mentioned before, right? Businesses exist for a couple of reasons, mostly to make as much money as possible and to keep as much money as possible. And from that viewpoint, right, this is the first thing that comes to mind, right? This is our ideal customer. Look, just take my money. In an ideal world, we wouldn't have to worry about this. If people just line up, buy our product, buy our service, and then we come home with a nice paycheck every 2 weeks, and life would be good. Um, and until that day comes, we do have to provide professional value. We do have to deliver good services and knowledge. And the ways that I think from a high level that I would recommend is, right, we in the GRC function, we have to know the laws, we have to know the requirements, the regulations. What do our customers care about? What do the governments that we happen to sell through, right? So for example, Wistic, and we work in Oceania. We have, of course, we're based in the United States, so we have a lot of North American business. We also work in Europe, so we have to make sure that, hey, what are the Australian requirements, for example, for information security? Of course, we have GDPR, which is not security, but is tangential. It's privacy, and we have to understand those requirements and then be able to translate those requirements into something actionable throughout our organization. So that is a plug that I give for the governance standpoint, right? Knowing the laws, knowing what we have to do, and the why is critical. We also want to make sure that we understand what our business goals are, right? Make money, keep as much money as possible, and then consider what might negatively impact those, right? We want to make sure that we keep a strong reputation, that we protect data, that we protect the rights of data owners, that we're keeping data secure. We want to avoid those fines, which generally comes from not doing the things that we're supposed to do based on governance requirements, right? But we can also think of the non-tangibles too, right? Like inefficiency, right? That is a risk. If we're spending 5 hours doing a thing that should only take us one, that is a risk to our business, because we at that point wouldn't be making as much money as we need to, right? So that's something that we can definitely also provide an eye to. And also making sure that we have good processes in place to collect evidence and then demonstrate evidence that we have been doing the things that we need to, that we are that we are an organization that does truly care about security. We just don't say that in word only. We care about making sure that you have a good experience and that things are going the way that they should be. So this is what these are some of the key areas that I can think of just off the top of my head about how GRC delivers that superpower. I wish I could talk more about this. This is the really fun stuff, but this I hope kind of gets your mind cooking about different ways that you can think about how you can make GRC your superpower. Some common questions before we jump into an official, the I guess the more unofficial Q&A. Is GRC technical? This is something that I ask myself a lot getting into the realm, getting into security, moving away from financial software engineering background. I mean, technical can mean a lot of different things. So it depends how you define technical, right? Are you going to be coding? Maybe. It depends on your role and what you're interested in, because GRC in and of itself is very broad. You don't have to code. You don't have to configure firewalls or write DNS rules, right? Technical could be, hey, I know how to use this tool suite very well. I know how to use Salesforce, for example. I know some very talented security and GRC folks that are more on the business intelligence side. They wouldn't consider themselves technical, but I disagree. They're very good at what they do with the technology and the systems that they are over. There's a wide range of roles also that fall in GRC, right? You can be a system administrator. You don't have to have security or risk or compliance, anything official in your title to be delivering good, solid GRC value. Because remember, right, GRC, while we can most definitely conceptualize and visualize it as a job role family, I think it might be more appropriate in the course of our discussion to think about it as a set of skills, right? So system administrator, you're technical for sure, maybe not technical in a sense, right? You're not coding probably, but you're definitely delivering GRC value. Same thing with IAM, policy management, project management, the executives, right? Our C-suite. They have to be well versed in compliance requirements, the governing factors and requirements behind that, and then how they're going to manage risk in their verticals. So the TLDR for that is, it's never bad to learn something new. Get really good at what you're already doing, even if it's not security specific, because the context will grow in time as you spend time thinking about that. Also, I mentioned privacy before. Quick plug about it. I mean, privacy and security aren't the same, but we work hand in hand. I think it would be inaccurate to say that we don't have a very similar mission, and that security is, or rather privacy is, a very great place to be. If you have privacy interests, right, especially if we're thinking about sovereign rights for individuals, about what belongs to them, how we can protect that, definitely something that we should be thinking about, and how we can support that mission. There's way more crossover than there are areas of conflict. So I think that if you're interested in it, I don't know if I'd say that it's technically GRC or security, right? But I think that it would be, I would be remiss if I didn't encourage that as a good area of opportunity to learn, develop new skills, and meet great people. Yeah, can't say enough about that. All right, high level. We've talked about a lot. I know I've gotten really wordy, and I'll let you just kind of take a quick peek at this, right? But we've talked about how GRC can be a great thing for you, and I want to give the encouragement that there's not a lot of hard requirement like there is for other areas, right? We don't have to go to school. We don't have to go to med school. Thank goodness. I couldn't have lasted if we needed to go to school for years and years to get really good at this, and then start doing this work. There's lots of ways to get involved, and I just re-encourage all of you that if you're not in GRC, or if maybe you'd like to get more into it but haven't yet, just say, hey, find the people that are responsible for some of the GRC activity at your organization. Say, hey, I'd love to get involved. What can I do for you? And I can almost promise you, and if I had if I had the extra cash, I'd almost bet you that they'd be more than happy to take you up on that work, because there's a lot of joy that comes from it. It's hard sometimes, it's a grind, but there's so much good stuff that comes from this. It doesn't have to be a stepping stone, right? I don't think that it's bad to think of it that way, that GRC is a stepping stone into security, because security does a lot of very specific things. But if you like the breadth of what the information security and the overall GRC field can provide, I think that this is a great home for you. We would love to have you here. And right, you don't have to have that role. If you want to still be an engineer, if you still want to be a marketing professional, be a sales rock star, right? I think that's fantastic, and you should continue to do that. You can also continue to develop those GRC skills, because they will serve you well throughout your career, no matter what you do, no matter what your role, no matter your vertical organization. Some parting thoughts before we wrap up. A lot of folks see these, and they'll come to me and say, hey, I saw this map, this diagram, and I think these are both a fantastic resources to start with. And they're and a lot of people come feeling intimidated. I agree. What I tell you right now is not that these aren't good or that you shouldn't use them, but take a step back, take a breath. It's easy to get overwhelmed in this industry because of all the acronyms that we have, all the different concepts, and the sometimes conflicting opinions of, oh, you need this or you need that, you need to be able to do these XYZ skills before you can get into the area. I'd encourage you to just take a step back. Remember that this is a broad field, and we need your expertise. We need you to think about how you can contribute, because what GRC is about, if we're getting a little bit philosophical, is about making the world a better place. Not forcing it, not demanding, but saying, hey, these are our options. What is our best course forward? I'm happy to stand next to you and provide what I can. Right. And many of you might see that this is also my background right now. When I moved over from the engineering team to be on the security team, I put this on because people were freaking out when I pull them onto Zoom calls, right? The security person's calling me, and it ends up being scary, a scary experience. So I started putting this on, which is from a great show called The Good Place, just to let them know, hey, it's fine. I'm your partner. I'm not here to throw you under the bus, to give you a hard time, to make you feel bad. I'm here as a partner to support you and do what I can. So remember, so for all of you that aren't here, that aren't in a full-time GRC role right now, and are trying, everything is fine. Welcome. We would love to have you. For those of you that are and are looking for something different, everything's still fine, right? We're moving forward. We're moving in the right direction, and everything is fine. My friends, do we have any questions? I'm not sure exactly how we're handling these, but I'd love to contact you. This QR code is for LinkedIn. I'm not very active on Discord, but I'm more than happy to connect however I can, my friends. Nice to meet you all, and thanks so much for attending. Thanks, Simply Cyber community, for what you do, and Jerry for putting this all together.
Yeah, my pleasure. Go ahead and grab that. Okay. All right. So that's perfect. So Honda, Chris, it makes me think of Honda, like stupid, but, so
No, it's
Chris,
good.
a lot of love. We have just about a minute. We could probably take one question. There are a couple in chat. If you have time, maybe, I know you said you don't really do Discord much, but if you could go over to the con Discord channels and go into track one chat, maybe folks could get their questions answered over there. There was a couple great questions. I guess, like, just to pick one, okay. This particular one was like, what's the barrier of entry to a GRC role? So what can people, what can people do? Like, you're talking about GRC being epic, right? So, like, I guess if you're going to give one small piece of advice into breaking in GRC, what would it be?
Oh, that's good. That's a great question, Jerry, and I wish I had a concise answer that was maybe a little less nebulous. But I think honestly, asking that question why behind a lot of different things, right? So okay, so I saw the context for that was, hey, I have at least a decade of experience in IT, and that you're a rock star in your field at that point. Absolutely, right? You've been thinking about, okay, this is what we do, how we do it, and I know that that there's going to be the context of the why behind that. And then at that point, we just have to then frame it into, okay, well, what are our compliance requirements? So for example, if you have to follow the ITIL framework, right? Okay, this is that is, I guess you could say, the why behind it, but then digging deeper and thinking, okay, how can we do this better, right? What else can we do? How can we tweak this, make this adjustment to then reduce risk, or make us in a better position for our customers to trust us and deliver more value? So asking that why, how can we do things better, is a great way to start.
All right. I want to thank Chris. Sorry, my mechanical keyboard is super cool until I'm live streaming, and it's not super cool because it's wicked clacky. But hey everybody, thank you so very much. I got to tell you, Chris, when your talk came on, the numbers bumped up on attendance, so people were fired up for some GRC love. If you have a question for Chris, head over to the Discord server, track one open chat. I think Chris is going to give us a couple minutes at least to get in there, and we can get in there. So, Chris, thank you for sharing your stories with us, and we appreciate it.
Thanks, Jared. It's been a pleasure. Great to meet you all, and we'll see you all over in Discord.
All right, perfect.